The story begins in Australia, with a Canadian named Greg and an Englishwoman named Heather. The two are tourists staying in the same hostel, and today they came to check out Tucker's Experience, a tour that promises thrilling encounters with sharks. However, they didn't book anything in advance, and now find everything deserted, except for a chatty old man on the neighboring boat. His name is Dave, and he has fun at the expense of the young people, telling crazy stories about shark attacks. The two don't find much humor in his macabre jokes, and are about to give up on the adventure when Tucker arrives and introduces himself. He seems happy to hear that the two are not a couple, and Heather also perks up with the captain's flattery. A bit awkward about the situation, Greg apologizes for not making the reservation, explaining that the plan for today was a water park, but they lost track of time. Tucker says it doesn't matter, and comments that it seems nobody knows the two young people are there. Although she finds the question strange, Heather soon realizes he's joking, pretending that his tour is so extreme that it would be better to draft a will. Greg gets excited about the conversation, eager to swim with the sharks, while Heather chuckles nervously and hides her fear. Then the trio sets off, and Tucker begins to tell his story to the tourists, showing the report about the shark attack he suffered in childhood. He claims the bite didn't even tickle, but his huge scar shows that it probably wasn't quite like that. The playful tone disappears when Heather asks who was taking care of him, and he explains that he used to be alone. Then it's time to dive, and Greg tries to calm his friend, who almost backs out upon seeing the first fin. Tucker suggests a relaxing moment, holding hands and closing their eyes, saying that this is an ancient practice in the seas. In the middle of the meditation, he starts singing Baby Shark, a children's song famous for being catchy. Heather finds it so funny that she ends up truly relaxing, and before she knows it, she's being locked in the cage with Greg. Several sharks are swimming around them, and, after the initial fright, Heather grabs her friend's arm and manages to enjoy the beauty of the moment. When Tucker announces that time is up, the two exit the cage in awe, and Greg starts thanking him for fitting them in on the tour. This dream turns into a nightmare when Tucker suddenly attacks Greg with a knife, for no reason, and pushes him off the boat, leaving Heather horrified. Not far from there is the Gold Coast region, where a young American named Zephyr is living for a while. In a convenience store, she meets a guy named Moses who is having trouble with his car and couldn't find the cable he needed to buy. In the parking lot, Zephyr spills her soda in the trash and grabs the ice cream she hid in the cup to avoid paying. Soon after, she runs into Moses again and tries to play it cool, but he saw what she did and hints that he will tell the store if she doesn't lend him the cable. Facing the girl's indignation, he changes his tone and explains that he's walked several blocks in the sun, begging for a ride back to his car. On the way, she asks about his serious clothes, and he explains that he is a real estate agent. Despite the rocky start and the difference in styles, the two get a bit closer through their mutual passion for surfing, and then discover that their taste in music also matches. Zephyr finally lets her guard down and gives the guy a chance, spending the night with him. However, while Moses becomes infatuated and even makes an effort to prepare a meal, Zephyr doesn't get attached to anyone and has already left by the time the pancakes are ready. Only when she parks the van by the beach does she remember that her leash key was left at the guy's house. Seeing a truck parked a few meters away, she starts looking for a key she can use, letting it be known aloud that she intends to return it. She gets a big scare when she hears the owner arriving, and then we see it's Tucker, already smiling at the girl in trouble. He offers her a leash key as a gift, saying he has plenty of them, and praises her courage to go surfing alone. Not intimidated, Zephyr points out that he is also alone, and thanks him for the gift, saying goodbye before starting to adjust her board. Then Moses sends a photo of the feast, adding a bit of drama, and asks if he can go surfing with her. Zephyr types yes, but then changes her mind and responds more coldly, stating that the ocean is open to everyone. However, she doesn't even get to see Moses' response because her head is suddenly shoved into a plastic bag when Tucker attacks her from behind. After overpowering her with a chokehold, he administers a sedative to keep her from waking up too quickly, and tape moves her mouth for precaution. He then hides her inside a board bag and takes her to the docks. Dave's dog starts barking as soon as he arrives, and Tucker only responds with a threatening glance before going to lock up his hostage. We see that Moses still hasn't given up on winning Zephyr over with treats, and soon finds her van parked near the beach. While he tries to call her, Zephyr is waking up with her mouth taped and her wrist handcuffed to a bed. Desperate, She pulls the tape off her mouth and starts asking questions to Heather, who is handcuffed to the bed next to her. She explains that they are trapped in a compartment on Tucker's boat and apologizes for the odor coming from the bucket, revealing that she has been trapped there for some time. Hearing this, Zephyr panics even more and begins to scream for help, but Heather cries and assures her that no one can hear them. We see that she is telling the truth, as Tucker's boat is at sea and there are not even other vessels nearby. The compartment they are in is in the storage area, and there is a warning sign alerting that the door must always be kept closed to avoid accidents. Heather brightens up when she sees that Zephyr has useful skills in this situation and helps her look for something sharp to free the handcuffs. Despite inspiring her with her strong attitude, Zephyr is also shaken a bit when she sees a woman's name written in the corner of the wall, as this indicates that they are not the first victims, and that the others hardly left there alive, since Tucker remains free. While he calmly fishes on the deck, Zephyr asks what the chances are that someone is looking for Heather, and the response is not very encouraging. When she returns the same question, Zephyr says that no one would miss her either, unaware that Moses is still thinking of her when he sees her van being towed. Knowing that the vehicle is also Zephyr's home, he concludes that something is wrong and goes to the police station immediately. However, upon hearing that the girl is a nomadic surfer, the officer deduces that she must have gotten herself into some kind of trouble and doesn't put much effort into the case. While Zephyr kicks the headboard of the bed, still trying to free herself, Heather laments not having listened to her mother's advice. She didn't want her daughter to take this gap year to travel, fearing horror stories about girls traveling alone. Besides that, the trip would delay the life plan that included graduation, career, and marriage. Keeping her worldview despite the circumstances, Zephyr says that this life was ideal for Heather's mother and not herself, who should follow her own plan. Heather asks about Zephyr's family, and she shares that she grew up in orphanages in America until she decided to move as far away as possible. In the middle of the conversation, Zephyr notices Heather's bikini support, and she takes off the top to remove the wire. As soon as she throws the wire to Zephyr, she begins to work on the handcuffs, but has to stop and pretend when she hears someone approaching. Tucker enters the storage with the hostage's snack, and Heather is indecisive between quenching her thirst and risking the plan, as he might get suspicious if he notices that she is topless. Thirst wins out, and Zephyr helps distract the captor, demanding her food in an authoritative tone. Tucker takes the bait and makes a speech about predators, making it clear that there is only one alpha on that boat. Zephyr hands the bikini back to Heather as soon as he leaves and hurries to unlock her handcuff, but starts to sweat cold and feel unwell. Only when Heather faints does she understand that there was something in the water they drank and ends up dropping the wire on the floor. Tucker confiscates it as soon as he returns and waits for her to also lose consciousness. Zephyr wakes up handcuffed to a chair on the deck and sees Heather trapped in a kind of crane, while Tucker prepares a video camera. He starts giving another one of his speeches, this time praising sharks as the most powerful species on Earth, and then cuts off a lock of Heather's hair, who is beginning to wake up. Zephyr is in shock seeing her being raised by the crane, as she realizes that Tucker plans to offer her to the sharks as food. Heather screams and thrashes while he lowers the crane arm to the surface so he can film the attack. A shark appears right then and bites the girl, who struggles violently. She is still alive when her right leg sinks into the sea and the beast pulls away, satisfied. Tucker makes a point to film all the horror and even includes Zephyr's reaction at the end. Back in the storage, she discovers there are more names on the wall, hidden beneath a layer of paint. Tucker celebrates his wickedness with a gruesome dance and stores the hairlock along with the videotape in a cabinet filled with previous records. Already preparing the next sacrifice, he writes Zephyr's name on a tag. The next day, Heather's head is already far from the boat, while Moses's mind remains fixed on Zephyr, even more so when he finds a board adrift. When Tucker comes down with the day's meal, Zephyr angrily kicks the tray and tells him he needs to look in the mirror, as he has much more in common with the worms or the ocean trash than with sharks. Despite the furious expression, he refuses to lose control and simply makes a comment about the bucket to remind her that it is she who is in an embarrassing situation. Little does he know that this only helps her. As soon as she finds herself alone again, she starts dismantling the bucket to use a piece as a weapon. Tucker dines while watching Heather's death again, and then prepares the next syringe, but when he is about to administer it, Zephyr buries the makeshift knife in his neck and takes his keys while he is down. She manages to quickly unlock the handcuff and starts feeling around in his pants pocket when he suddenly wakes up. Zephyr runs outside and tries to lock him in the storage, but he blocks the door with his body. Then she flees to the stairs and he soon catches up with her, sinking the needle into her leg. However, she retaliates with a kick to the face that knocks him to the ground and manages to escape to the upper level, where she tries to call for help on the radio. The dizziness is beginning to hit her hard when she looks out the window and sees a boat nearby. Almost losing consciousness, she starts waving and tries to scream, but her voice barely comes out of her throat, and there is a party on the other boat with loud music. Tucker soon reappears and finds it amusing to see her grabbing the tripod of the video camera as if she were going to attack him. Seeing that she really won't have the strength to do that, she settles for throwing the camera into the water and then rolls off the boat. She faints right after the dive, but we see her arm getting snagged by a hook that starts pulling her back. Still distressed about her disappearance, Moses uses an app that has access to security cameras along the beach and sees a tow truck passing right behind Zephyr's van. Imagining that the driver may have more information, he zooms in on the logo on the door and discovers Tucker's experience number. Since no one answers, he leaves a message asking Tucker to return the call without explaining the reason for his contact. At the same time, Tucker risks a return to the docks to get another video camera, and Dave is surprised to see him back so soon. He tries to pass on the phone number of a group of rich people interested in the tour, but Tucker turns his back on the neighbor, impatient. Moses arrives while he is still in the shop, and the traffic in town helps to delay him a bit, along with the young woman passing by on the street, absorbing his attention. In the absence of the captain, Moses begins to snoop around the boat and ends up hearing Zephyr's pounding on the wall. He breaks the window of the deck and rushes into the storage, unaware that Tucker is already on his way. Zephyr is handcuffed to the bed when Moses finds her, and she urges him to call the police, as well as to look for something to free her from the cuffs. Trying to do both at the same time, he climbs the stairs while making the call and is knocked down by Tucker as soon as he reaches the deck. Hearing someone answer, he still tries to shout something, but he gets beat up so much that he can't speak, and Tucker throws the phone away. Furious with the intrusion, he corners the young man against the wall and raises a hook to deliver the final blow. Then Moses suddenly recovers and hits him with the shopping bag, quickly turning the tables. Tucker is almost suffocating when Dave appears to save him, hitting Moses on the head with a paddle. However, now that Zephyr is without the gag, Dave finally hears her voice calling for help and begins to realize that the situation is more complex than he imagined. Before he can realize that he has made a big mistake, Tucker strikes him in the forehead with the hook's tip and scares his dog, barking back at him. Then he examines a map and charts the next macabre route, imprisoning Moses along with Zephyr. He apologizes for failing in the rescue and tries to get her to open up to him, but she pushes him away again, saying she's better off alone. Then the two feel the boat slowing down, and from the horror on Zephyr's expression, Moses senses that something terrible is about to happen. It doesn't take long for Tucker to descend into the storage to fetch them, because it's time for another meal. Zephyr is sedated and panics upon waking on the deck again, with Moses trapped in the crane and Dave's remains thrown on the floor. Trying to save her friend, she starts screaming that Moses is not a tourist and his family has money, which means they will never stop looking for him. None of this shakes him, and he lifts the young man in front of the boat while the sharks are already swimming in circles below. In one last attempt, Zephyr pleads to swap places with him, saying he's a good person who doesn't deserve this. Tucker mocks the romance and half-submerges the young man, as he did with Heather. The Finns surround him closely, and the only thing Zephyr can do to help is tell him to remain still. With a great effort to control the panic, he obeys that advice and stays still amidst the sharks, which indeed do not attack him. Tucker becomes furious seeing the beasts leaving, but he doesn't give up on the spectacle and only brings Moses back to the boat to stab him in the belly with a knife. Zephyr screams in rage at such cowardice, and the sharks return as soon as the blood drips into the sea. It is then that Tucker suddenly stops the crane and announces a brief intermission, as the Coast Guard helicopter is flying over the area. This forces him to lock the hostages up again, and Zephyr, still appalled at Moses's condition, decides to do whatever it takes to get her hand out of the handcuff. Tucker makes a brief visit right after she breaks her own thumb, forced to swallow the pain until he leaves. Seeing that even then she can't get her hand through the hoop, Zephyr takes drastic action and starts biting herself until she rips off her thumb. Tucker only finds the finger on the bed when he returns, and he doesn't see Zephyr hiding behind the door. She escapes from the storage and locks Tucker inside, running to the cabin, where she sees that they are stopped near an island. While Tucker frees himself, she finds a flare gun, but is forced to use it against him to escape. This also doesn't stop him for long, and he blocks her escape through the kitchen ceiling, grabbing her legs. It is then that Zephyr hits him with a frying pan and wounds his palm with a knife, buying time for her to jump into the sea and swim toward the island. Tucker can only find her when he is too far for the harpoon's aim, so he leaves in a boat after her. There is a fancy party happening on the beach, but no one is on the sand when Zephyr approaches and the boat passes her by. Tucker quickly jumps and grabs her face until she passes out, returning to the boat with her unnoticed. This time, it is Moses who wakes up in the cabin and screams upon seeing Zephyr hanging and a much larger fin than the others coming in that direction. Fascinated to see it is a great white shark. Tucker submerges the offering with glee and even scares away a smaller shark, so it won't interfere. In doing so, he ends up losing his harpoon, and Zephyr picks it up, using it to free herself from the crane. Unconcerned, Tucker films all the effort, knowing that this will make the defeat even more enjoyable. Moses screams to warn that the white shark has returned, and for a moment, everyone is in great suspense. Tucker breaks the silence by startling Zephyr, who falls into the water, now free of the rope. From underwater, she remains completely still when she sees the beast before her and firmly holds her thumb with her other hand so it won't smell the blood. The shark approaches her closely and then turns away without seeming to notice her presence. Tucker remains obsessed with the animal, while Zephyr climbs the hull of the boat and jumps back inside. On tiptoes, she grabs another harpoon and gestures for Moses to be quiet until she is in the ideal position. Tucker turns when it is too late to run away, and she fires the harpoon at him, hitting his belly. He crashes into the water with a thud and groans in pain as he swims frantically back. Zephyr keeps her eyes on him and prepares to push him when he tries to surface, but she doesn't even have to bother, as something yanks him back with great force. Tucker starts looking around in desperation until the white shark attacks him from below and bites into his body during a sensational leap. Tucker can only emerge once more for the final close-up, caught by his own camera. Zephyr breathes a sigh of relief seeing him sink, but the harpoon line wraps around her feet, and she is yanked out of the boat. Moses screams until he passes out, and Zephyr comes back to the surface moments later, right next to Tucker's body. The partygoers are passing by again, and she runs back to the boat to use the flare gun. The other boat is just a bright spot on the horizon, when she lights it and begins to shout, but even then she can see they are starting to turn. Then she goes down to the deck and shakes Moses to wake him, saying she doesn't want to live alone anymore.